Every person who complains to the Independent Commission of having been sexually abused is informed of their right to report that sexual abuse to the police and encouraged to do so. I know that in my 16 or so years as counsel assisting, I did it repeatedly with victims, and I tried to do it in a way that was real encouragement, not just, you've got the right to do this. I would say to them, if what you tell me is true and I have no reason to disbelieve it, you should go to the police. That's a criminal offence, you should go to the police. And many of them, most of them, said, I know it's a criminal offence, I know what happened to me was a crime. I don't want to go to the police. But we'd keep encouraging them, and I'd say to them, if you change your mind at any time, tell me, we'll stop. We'll put our pens down, we'll stop, we'll help you go to the police. And when that process is finished, we'll still be here, and you can come back and tell us then, and we'll work through the process then. Ultimately, the Independent Commission respects the wishes of the victim. If a victim tells me, I know I can go to the police, I don't want to, I don't believe it's my role to compel them to do so or to dishonour their wish and go to the police nonetheless. If the person says, I do want to go to the police, either initially or some further way down the track of the process, then the Independent Commission assists them with that process, tells them who to go and see, contacts the police themselves if necessary. But we must remember that the majority of cases about which a complaint is made, the respondent's dead. There is no utility in taking a complaint about a deceased offender to the police. There's no sanction they can impose on that person. There's no step they can take to bring that person to justice. So obviously enough in those circumstances, the matter's not reported to the police. Typically, if a victim tells me that they don't want to go to the police, they tell me why. And the reasons vary, but they include things such as that they don't want their family to know. Sometimes an adult male, someone my age, is talking to me about abuse that occurred to him when he was 12 years old. And he's married and he's got children. And he doesn't feel that he's ready to tell his wife or his children. And there's an apprehension by victims of there being a public aspect to complaints to police that they can't control, and they fear that things will be taken out of their control and their identity will be revealed, even though that might not be the case. That's their belief, and their belief is so important. They tell me that on some occasions they've had dealings with the police. I mean, let's face it, if a child was sexually abused in the 1970s, there is a real prospect that that sexual abuse contributed to the child's life taking a course that it wouldn't have otherwise taken. And I'm sure, personally I'm convinced, that it has led to, in some instances, what otherwise would have been a wonderful, normal, happy, balanced life, taking a different course and a sadder course, and a course that involves criminal offences. So some of the people that come to see us as victims of sexual abuse have themselves been in trouble with the police, and they don't trust the police, they tell me, sometimes. So there's a lot of valid reasons why they say they don't want to go to the police. Sometimes they say, I don't want some defence barrister for the priest in a criminal court calling me a liar. Now, everybody knows that the criminal court is necessarily a very robust jurisdiction. Where someone is accused of a criminal offence, there's not the same sort of constraint imposed on the questioning of the complainant. So these are the sorts of reasons why people say that they don't want to go to the police. Sometimes they just say, I don't want to. Sometimes they're confused about what they want to achieve, and they don't know whether that involves retribution in the sense of a criminal sanction being imposed upon the person they're complaining about. The rest of us might have views about whether that person should be brought to justice in the criminal justice system, but we're not the people who were sexually abused by that person. And that's a big part of the reason why I think it's important we respect the wishes of the victim. Sometimes they want the truth to emerge, they want to confront the person, to have the person told that they are a sexual abuser, and they want financial compensation, but they don't want the person to go to jail. That's their view, and that's sometimes the reason they tell me that they don't want to go to the police. The only way I can gauge the response of victims to the Melbourne Response is by observing the process and observing them through the process, and from feedback that I get during and after the process. From those two ways of looking at it, I'm convinced that the overwhelming majority of victims who make a complaint to the Independent Commission get a substantial measure of satisfaction at having done so. They seem to me, and many of them tell me, that they feel a sense of release at having talked about something that they've been bottling up for years or even decades. They talk to me about the sense of validation that they get when they've told their story, someone sat there and listened to them. They've been questioned, they've been tested on aspects of their story, and they've been believed. These are people who were abused as children, who didn't feel they had any power to stand up for themselves, who didn't feel they'd be believed. And they say to me, and have said to me many times, that having a person who doesn't know them and who doesn't know the priest or the nun or the brother or the respondent at all, sit there and hear the whole story and say, I believe you, you were sexually abused, is a tremendously validating and beneficial aspect of the process. They tell me how hard it is to talk about these things, how embarrassing it is sometimes, how difficult it is, but ultimately that it was worth it. It is, of course, a difficult thing, if it's a contested hearing, to be in the same room as the person against whom you're making an allegation of sexual abuse. And they worry about that before it happens, and I understand that. But we try as best we can to conduct the process so that they feel physically separate from the person against whom they're making the allegation, that they feel supported with their family or their lawyers or their friends, whoever it might be. There is, however, at the end of that process, I think, a sense of having confronted the person who sexually abused them, that sense of having gained the power to be in the same room, look at them if they want to, not look at them if they don't, but to have the person against whom they're making the allegation of sexual abuse sit in the same room and hear their words as they say, that person sexually abused me. They say that that's very beneficial. It doesn't undo the sexual abuse, but it helps them move through the process. And my observation of them through the process, and this as counsel assisting and more recently for me as commissioner, I do get to see these people over a period of time. And my observation of the people is that yes, it is an emotional process, and there's tears and the laughter of release and the good memories they have. So many people say to me, the awful thing about this sexual abuse is that it happened at a time in my life when I had good friends and there were other good teachers and there were good priests and there were good brothers, and it's not fair that this person disturbed that and interfered with that. So there's happy times that they remember as well, but I see them dealing with the emotion and the difficulty of the bad times, but they're dealing with it. They're doing something. They're speaking up and they're being heard. And that's the feedback that I get at the end. I can say, if not every single person I've dealt with, certainly the overwhelming majority has expressed a positive view about the process they've been through. They tell me that they were treated with respect and dignity, and I really hope that that's the case, because that's what we try to do.